There's a silent burden that haunts the truly intelligent man, and it has nothing to do with intellect itself, but with how that intellect isolates him in a world that rewards charm, conformity, and predictable desires. Søren Kierkegaard once wrote that the deepest pain of human existence comes not from external suffering, but from internal misalignment, the tragic disconnect between who we are and what the world expects us to be. The intelligent man is often caught in that very rift. He sees what others don't. He questions what others accept. He detaches from things most people find comforting: small talk, gossip, the performance of daily life. And while this awareness may elevate him intellectually, it also alienates him socially, especially from women who are conditioned to seek emotional security over philosophical uncertainty. Let's be brutally honest. Most women don't want to wrestle with reality at 2 a.m. They want stability, validation, a man who gets it, not one who deconstructs it. They want a future they can predict, not a mind they can't penetrate. This is where the intelligent man becomes a threat, not because he's harmful, but because he's unreadable. And what we can't read, we fear. The philosopher's curse is solitude. His greatest weapon, his mind, becomes the very thing that disqualifies him from the comfort of conventional relationships. You'll notice it when he speaks. He's precise, not loud. He listens more than he talks. He pauses when others rush. And when he opens his mouth, he doesn't flatter, he reveals. And that, to many women, is terrifying. Because he doesn't give the dopamine they're used to. He gives depth, and that's far more confronting. See, intelligent men don't play the social mating game well. They don't mirror emotions for comfort. They don't fake enthusiasm. They don't play boyfriend roles just to be liked. They dissect, observe, and they question, relentlessly. This makes them feel cold, distant, maybe even dangerous. But here's the paradox Kierkegaard would have understood better than most. The more awake a man becomes, the less relatable he becomes, and thus, the more likely he is to be misunderstood, feared, or rejected. Because the average person doesn't want someone who makes them think deeply. They want someone who makes them feel better. And the intelligent man? He refuses to dilute himself just to make someone comfortable. That's not arrogance, it's integrity. But in a world of shallow waters, depth often looks like danger. And this is the origin of the fear. Not of the man himself, but of the mirror he holds up to the soul of the other. So next time someone says, "Smart men intimidate women," know this: it's not the intelligence that frightens, it's what it exposes. And that's only the beginning. There's a dangerous undercurrent in modern society, one that few talk about. Yet it shapes everything from dating preferences to long-term relationships. It's this: women are conditioned, not consciously, but culturally, to be wary of men who do not emotionally depend on them. And the intelligent man? He rarely does. From childhood, girls are taught, through media, through peers, through subtle reward systems, that their value lies in emotional influence. To inspire a man, motivate him, tame him, change him. This is not always malicious, but it is manipulative. Because when a woman meets a man who doesn't need her approval, who doesn't crumble under emotional pressure, who doesn't perform to be liked, her power disappears. Not because he disrespects her, but because he is self-contained. And for many, that's intolerable. Intelligent men, especially those shaped by introspection, by Kierkegaard's individual truth, are not swayed by popular opinion or emotional theatrics. They won't argue for the sake of connection. They won't collapse into tears for attention. They won't be baited by shame, guilt, or passive aggression. They will either walk away or stand still with unnerving calm. That's terrifying to someone whose entire sense of control relies on emotional leverage. Understand this. It's not about dominance, it's about autonomy. A man who can think for himself and feel without being manipulated is the rarest kind of man. And he triggers every cultural script that says, you must be vulnerable, soft, available. But these men are not unavailable. They are simply guarded, with reason. They've seen too much, thought too deeply, and felt the cold cost of giving themselves too freely. So they choose silence where others speak, boundaries where others beg, clarity where others confuse. Society doesn't celebrate this kind of man. It punishes him because he cannot be monetized. He doesn't buy into fantasies. He doesn't subscribe to the religion of consumer love. He doesn't worship the image of the ideal woman, the Instagram dream, the perfect emotional fit. He worships truth. And truth in most modern relationships is a fatal threat, because the moment a man sees through the performance, the game is over. And this is why most women aren't just not attracted to intelligent men, they are subtly trained to be repelled by them. Because you can't play a man who's already read the script. Not all loneliness is created equal. The intelligent man doesn't suffer from the absence of people. He suffers from the absence of resonance. And here's the cruel irony Kierkegaard would have recognized. The more aware you become, the fewer people you can connect with. Not because you're arrogant, but because your perception pierces straight through illusion. This is the emotional fatigue no one talks about. The kind that comes from constantly translating your thoughts into simpler language just to be understood. From filtering your ideas to avoid intimidating others. From shrinking your emotional depth because most can't handle silence without suspicion. Relationships, for most intelligent men, don't feel like bonding. They feel like performance. Smile here, numb there. Pretend you didn't notice that manipulation. Ignore that contradiction. All to keep things smooth. But when your mind is sharp and your intuition even sharper, you notice everything. The mask, the insecurity behind the confidence, the test behind the compliment, the fear behind the flirtation. You see it, you feel it, and it drains you. That's the paradox. The intelligent man wants to connect, but every attempt feels like self-betrayal. So eventually, he stops trying, not because he's bitter, but because he's tired. Tired of dumbing himself down to make others feel smart. Tired of pretending not to care when he sees through someone's games. Tired of always being the deep guy who's never fully understood. And when it comes to women, especially those shaped by a culture of comfort over challenge, this exhaustion multiplies. Because they don't just want presence, they want predictable presence. A man who can mirror their moods, a man who can validate their worldview, a man who knows when to lead, but not so confidently that it challenges them. The intelligent man doesn't do this on command. He leads with truth, not appeasement. And that's rare, unsettling, even irritating. Because most aren't looking for truth, they're looking for agreement. So when he doesn't react how they expect, he becomes difficult, too intense, detached. But he's not detached. He's self-protective. He's learned, through trial, through heartbreak, through watching others implode, that most people don't want his depth. They want his energy, his attention, his silence when they talk, and his wisdom when they stumble. They want to consume what he's built, but not understand how it was built. And over time, this leads him to a brutal conclusion. It's safer to be alone than to be constantly misunderstood. So he retreats, into thought, into solitude, into the one place no one can touch, his own mind. But isolation has its own cost. There's a kind of loneliness that no crowd can cure. It doesn't come from being alone. It comes from being unseen. For the intelligent man, especially one shaped by Kierkegaard's existential insights, this becomes his silent plague. He walks through the world awake, but surrounded by sleepers. He hears conversations, but they feel like echoes. He enters relationships, but they feel like performances. He tries to connect, but every connection frays under the weight of his awareness. This is not superiority, it's sensitivity. He feels more because he sees more. And what he sees is often tragic. He sees how people cling to distractions to avoid themselves. He sees how most romance is a transaction dressed in poetry. He sees how vulnerability is weaponized, how honesty is punished, how truth is avoided unless it flatters. and so he withdraws. Not out of arrogance, but out of despair. Because how do you connect with someone who thinks your silence is cold, when in reality that silence is you drowning in thought? How do you open your heart to someone who panics the moment they feel uncertainty, when your whole life has been a search through the unknown? This is the Kierkegaardian crisis, the individual who chooses to live authentically, even when authenticity means alienation, and the intelligent man bears it all. He may love, but few women can meet him in the abyss he lives in. They mistake his stillness for distance, his introspection for lack of affection, his reluctance to speak for emotional failure. But he's not failing, he's processing, navigating the depths of existence, often alone, because no one taught him how to carry this weight with others. He doesn't fear commitment, he fears misalignment. He knows that physical presence means nothing without spiritual companionship, that passion fades when minds don't meet, that beauty dulls when conversations become chores. So he waits for someone rare, someone real, someone who doesn't need to be entertained but who can sit with him in silence and understand. But that wait, it's a form of suffering, because the longer he remains misunderstood, the more he begins to wonder, am I impossible to love, or just difficult to reach? This question eats away at him. It makes him colder, sharper, more selective, not because he's given up on connection, but because every failed attempt cost him something sacred, his energy, his trust, his willingness to try again. And so he builds his fortress higher, brick by brick, not to keep the world out, but to keep what's left of himself. Every intelligent man secretly carries a hope, however buried, however bruised, that one day someone will truly see him, not his achievements, not his style, his status, or how well he performs emotional duties, but him, the inner world, the unspoken weight, the mind beneath the silence. And when that moment comes, when a woman looks past the exterior and speaks directly to the part of him that no one else ever acknowledged, it is both ecstasy and danger, because something sacred happens. He lets go. He puts the armor down, the sarcasm, the detachment, the intellectual shields. And for the first time in years, maybe in his life, he feels safe. That's not romantic. That's revolutionary. But here's the brutal truth Kierkegaard warned us about. What the self builds over decades in solitude, love can dismantle in days. You see, when the intelligent man finally experiences that rare resonance, it undoes him. His carefully curated distance evaporates, his hypervigilance drops, his solitude, once protective, starts to feel suffocating. And in that opening, he becomes vulnerable, not emotionally clingy, but existentially exposed, because now he knows that connection is possible, that someone can reach him, and the thought of losing it is terrifying. So paradoxically, the very man who once rejected intimacy now fears its loss more than anything. He overthinks, he questions her motives, he replays every interaction looking for signs of deception, erosion, or retreat. Why? Because he's not used to being understood. He's used to being a mirror that reflects others, not a soul being reflected back. And if she ever pulls away, even slightly, it doesn't just hurt him. It threatens the entire foundation of who he's learned to become. Because he didn't evolve in love, he evolved in isolation. So when love finally touches him, it feels like both salvation and a slow unraveling. This is why many intelligent men, after rare moments of true connection, disappear into deeper solitude if that bond breaks. They don't bounce back, they implode. Because what they offered wasn't a role or routine, it was their entire being. That's the risk. To be truly seen is the greatest gift and the greatest gamble. Kierkegaard said that love is not merely about emotion, it is about commitment to truth. And when truth enters love, it becomes a crucible. Either it burns away illusion and leaves purity, or it consumes everything, leaving nothing but ash. For the intelligent man, there is no middle path. So if you ever wonder why he's slow to open, or why his affection feels guarded, understand this. It's not that he fears women. He fears being unseen again, after finally being known.